This video contains my response to the first evaluation question. In what ways does your media product use, develop, or challenge forms and conventions of real media products? Much like Toast, my magazine had a large masthead in the top left corner. This is where you would expect to find the masthead of any magazine. Similarly to Toast, I also made the legibility of my masthead a priority, so I also used a sans serif font for the majority of it. I also stuck to the conventions displayed by Toast when I grouped the issue, date, and free text all in the top right corner. I did this so that my audience knew that my magazine was free and when it came out. However, I did go against the conventions when I chose to make my main cover line a serif font. This makes it harder to read, but more accurately represents the festive mood I tried to create in my magazine. However, I then adhered to the conventions again by using the same coloured text for the explanation of my cover line in order to anchor them to one another. I also adhered to the conventions of regional listings magazines when I added a banner at the bottom. I did this to give my audience an idea of what they may find inside. I changed the convention slightly when I chose to use a medium long shot for my front cover. However, it was not quite as unconventional as Toast, as the background of my picture was not a person. Despite the shot type being different, I still used an attractive model in order to encode my preferred hegemonic meaning that she is the reader's ideal self or partner. For this advertisement, I mostly adhered to the conventions displayed by food advertisements in magazines. The first way in which I adhered to the conventions was when I chose to artfully arrange my mince pies for my photograph. However, I did challenge the conventions as well, because my photograph is much busier and more crowded than the one in the magazine. This was done to give the picture a festive vibe which I may not have gotten had I just shown the pies. Much like this advertisement, I used a sans serif font, but I used it for my slogan rather than the company name, which is in a logo at the bottom of my page. I also adhered to the conventional layout of adverts, as I had some text at the top and some other text at the bottom. I also did this as it is how Mr. Kipling adverts are set out, which is also why I put my logo at the bottom as opposed to the top like the other magazine did. For my Lush advertisement, I adhered to the conventions of this kind of advert almost completely. I used a slightly altered variation of their slogan in order to make it seem like a real Lush advertisement. This is also why I used such a similar sans serif font and text size. However, I chose to put my logo in the centre at the bottom of this page and increased its size in order to make it feature more prominently in the ad. This was also done to reduce the amount of empty space in this advertisement. I also stuck with the conventional technique of using a dissolved bath bomb as the background. However, my bath bomb secreted glitter as opposed to foam. Unfortunately, I struggled to find a billboard ad for another regional listings magazine, so I used the conventions of this cosmopolitan billboard as a guide, but chose to challenge many of them. The first way in which I did this was with my photograph. The one used in the cosmopolitan ad is very sleek and overtly sexual. I chose to avoid this. My photography is far less sexual and only covertly suggests that my model is the audience's ideal self or partner. I also choose to use far more vibrant colour to create a sense of excitement and joy as opposed to the sense of style that is evoked by the colour scheme of the cosmopolitan ad. I also challenged the conventions by including social media icons. I did this to show the reader where my magazine could be found. The only real way in which I adhered to the conventions of billboards like this was by including my logo and using a slogan. However, I even adapted this slightly. On mine, they are on the left so that they catch my audience's eye first. In the Cosmopolitans, it is the photograph that is there to catch the audience's attention. I also chose to wrap my slogan around my logo to tidy it up, as there was too much free space created when it was in a straight line. It also brings the billboard together in a way that it did not before. For my website, I used the conventions displayed by Now Then's website. As before, I did mostly adhere to these conventions. At the top of my page was my masthead, as you would expect of a conventional website. And just beneath that, in my welcome section, I have the slogan that I've used throughout my project, following the example set by Now Then's slogan, a magazine for Sheffield, which is just beneath their masthead. Following the example of Now Then, I chose to have a section where the stories of the most recent issue are displayed. However, unlike Now Then, I chose to add a picture to each of my features, so I did challenge the conventions a little there. I also challenged the conventions of a regional magazine website by not having an editorial section at the side. I chose to adhere to the conventions of a regional listings magazine website again when I included a Contact Us section. Like Now Then, I added a message section, my email address, phone number, and home address. I also added social media icons like Now Then. I thought all of this was very important for making my website look realistic. I also chose to add a map of the area underneath, which Now Then did not do. As such, I adapted the conventions in order to include something that I thought would be useful.